till Monday. On Mondays, we host Hard Talk, hosted by Karen Nunez Tesheira and Denise Demming. We have a very special guest in the one, Dr. Patrick Watson. Starts now. Under the topic, the outlook for Trinidad and Tobago's economy in the short to medium term and possible prescriptions for improvement. Let me say good afternoon, Karen, Denise, and Dr. Watson.
Good day.
Good day, Dr. Watson. Good to have you on the show.
Good day to you
Yes,
and good day
I
to
usually,
Denise. Yeah.
I would usually ask Denise to do the introduction, but I really think we want, if I could say, because we had the media review just, I think on Friday, June the 7th,
Yes.
the Minister of Finance what do you call they call it media review, but it's a variation of Appropriation Act or Supplementary Appropriation Act, whatever you call it. But it's the budget. Any difference is the budget, and really wanted to focus on the budget, the media budget. And I know you probably have answered these questions a lot of times, but we really do want to hear you on that. I'm looking for Dennise, and we are supposed to have also joining us a little later on the show is Dr. Indira Sadan. Just like you, very well known. Dr. Patrick Watson, you was, Dennise likes to say, and I think she probably is right. She says, what do you want to tell us about yourself that we don't know? Because we know so much about you, Dr. Watson. You're the lecturer for Lewis Economic Studies on applied economics. I mean, you what you call it, econometrics. I know you're measuring
Econometrics.
Yes.
Mixing the two words, economics and metrics, which is measuring in economics. That's what it is. It's Greek in origin.
And why is it so important? Just for the public to know.
Economics is a discipline that says a lot about numbers. And you need to know sometimes what these numbers are telling you. You
Right.
need to sometimes be able to forecast what these numbers will tell you. You need to be able to explain economic phenomena. For instance, economists frequently say things like, and they're very popular, income determines consumption, or consumption is a function of income. It's one of the best known theories in economics. All of you who would have done a little bit of economics would have
So
met
that
it.
explains the repo rate and our inflation rate then.
Yes, and we are able then to say, okay, if consumption is a function of income, we could measure the precise, we could measure the relationship between the two based on probability distributions and so on. So we are able to say, we can put numbers to things like the marginal propensity to consume and the average propensity to consume.
Oh, God, I feel like I'm in an economics class. And I'm definitely not in, as Dennise likes to say, good afternoon, Dennise. I'm definitely not in any maxi taxi. She always says, and I do agree with her, that what we try to do with the show, with the program, is information, but for the man in the street, to so much technical terms that they don't understand the meaning, and it's important. I just want to say one thing before I hand it over to Dennise to ask you more specifically about this media review and your thoughts on it. The reason I mentioned the econometrics, I'm putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable, as they say. But the reason why I mention it in particular, two reasons. One, Dr. Roger Hossain says, at least he was quoted as saying, what is it all about? I need the data. Unless I have the data, I can't go forward. It said, and then he made a comment. I don't know. I hope I'm not misquoting him, but he seems so frustrated, as if he said, you see me, things like that made me feel like I leave the country. I can't determine the state of the economy and where we are without giving data. And the last part to that is this. With this, our Minister of Finance, he really does not inspire confidence in what he says. That's
you say the Minister of Finance, the government. The government does not inspire.
I'm talking about the budget. That's what we really want to deal with, the economic performance. I really want to focus on that, and because I think that people understand if they can't do have food to eat, they can't pay for transportation, they can't send their children to school. I think, and what the Minister of Finance said, he says yes, and they're always complaining that the data is we have outdated data, but we get our data from the central bank, CSO, and so on. Guess what? So I went look up CSO for criminal stats. The last time is 2022. I will say for employment, Q4 of 2023. Then I look for data on about two or three things. I'll go to the central bank to look for their data, not on foreign exchange. They give you up to date, it's up to date. But you look for data on the GDP and real GDP, and you see the words ND for 2023 and stopping at 2022. So yes, we need a statistical institute because we want to know what the real situation is. And the minister, I don't know if you don't look at the CSO or you don't look at the central bank or you don't look at what the police who provide the central bank, the CSO with crime stats, but the data is outdated. They are not keeping up with June, where we are in June 2024. I just wanted to see that and hand it to Dennise.
Yeah. Okay, sure.
Thank you very much, Karen, and thank you very much, Dr. Watson, for joining us. I look forward to a fun afternoon with you. And I want to start with that foolish question that I asked. What is there about you that we don't know?
I'll say something that your husband will know about Dennise. He and I, our alma mater is Leeds University, as you probably know. And when I went there, I was a young athlete. You wouldn't believe that. See how I look now. And I had ambitions of being, of representing Trinidad. This is 1970. This is before Crawford floundered in 1972 and then rose again in 1976. I wanted to be a great athlete. And in fact, I'm going to tell the world, I remember beating Crawford in a race. That's long before he was Crawford. So, Crawford, I didn't even come first. I thought I came first. I actually came second to a colleague from Presentation College. Atinas was his name. And I can't remember, I don't know what Crawford did, but I mean, he went on to become Hazley Crawford, and he now has a whole stadium. So I joined the Leeds University Athletic Club, and the person who registered me was a Richard Demming, and a black Englishman, all equipped with the accent and all of that, which he no longer has. And
that's what she says. That's what she says.
and so
she said, you know what she said? I'll give you the joke. When she first met him, since she likes to say things people don't know, she said that when she first met him, she heard this black, this very British accent, and she said, "What you say?"
Yes. And I represented the university on a few occasions. I remember the first one was against Manchester University when I actually won the long jump. It wasn't a great jump, but I did win. I remember there was a heavy wind. And in the 100 meters, I kept it. The first time I ran into such a real British type, autumn wind coming at me and so on. I didn't do very well in that one. So yes, I intended to be a great athlete, to win medals at the Olympic Games, and to be my hero at the time, and still remains, was one called Jesse Owens. I thought I would repeat his feat. I'd win the 100 meters, I'd win the 200 meters. And I'd win the long jump. I wondered, though, he also won a gold medal in the 4x100 meters. And I wondered at the time which other three Trinidadians I would have to accompany me at that level. Of course, that never happened. But it was a dream.
What a wonderful story, Doctor.
That is a wonderful story. One full of regret, I might say. If I have to, it's tinged with a lot of regret, I have to say, and nostalgia.
Yeah.
I have to say.
So you moved away from athletics and you went into economics, and that's where we are now today.
But I didn't move. I was doing the both at the same time. I remember I went to Presentation College. When I went to Leeds University, I was a national scholar.
Oh,
Leeds, yeah. And So I had signed all these commitments to come back to Trinidad. So I was quite bright at school, if I must say so. And so I was doing the both.
It would appear so.
Yeah, I was doing both at the same time. I wasn't neglected. In fact, there was one person before me. In fact, the person who I think is singularly the best student who went to presentation College San Fernando. That's Uric Bob. And Uric Bob was also a national scholar. In fact, we won the very same scholarship, the Open Modern Studies Scholarship. He went off to England. He went to Cambridge. I went to Leeds University. And he represented Trinidad and Tobago at the I think it's the 1980 Olympic Games, or even before that, where he was an 800-meter runner. And if I remember well, he was in the finals of the 800 meters. So that's not to be scoffed at. He was quite an accomplished athlete. I don't know how many people know this, that Uric Bob was an Olympian. He was a great
I did not know that.
Yeah, well, you should go and you should go and
look at how much things we are finding out with Denise's question.
Yes.
And it's clear that I have a feeling if we gave the show a chance, we would not be talking anything about economics, but we'd be going down another route.
Yes, I like to talk about these these things.
But we have to use your expertise. As you said, you were quite a bright fellow in school, apparently. So we want to make use of that, quite a bright fellow. And yes. I want to really turn, because you see a lot of times, as Dennise says, which is really true, we use these terms, GDP, real GDP, RPO, all of these terms, inflation, and all these terms, and to a large extent, a lot of the revenue deficit, and it doesn't resonate with people. They cannot relate it. So I wanted to ask you about the recent mid-year review, because as you know, as when I was for a short period of time, one of your favorite ministers of finance, I might add.
Yes,
But anyhow, putting that aside, when you came to the mid-year review, you're looking at the Appropriation Act, which is really what the budget really is, right?
Yes.
The appropriating from the consolidated fund, which is like your big savings fund, and you appropriate it to different ministries and to different, the Office of the Judiciary, Office of the Prime Minister, etc., and it's a finite resource. And so the idea is, from my experience, is, and it still is, that in setting and determining the revenue, because you're looking to the future, the fiscal period, which usually is the end of September, latest is October, to the next fiscal year, which is the period, the tax period, that period.
I would like to, let's say, forget a little bit the legal technicalities of this. And I want to look at the economics of this thing.
All right.
A budget should really be part of an overall longer-term plan. Let's say a 5-year plan, and the budget should really be part. But it's not in the case of Trinidad and Tobago. And what I notice every year is that there is a scramble to find money to pay the bill. 90% of that budget, as you very well know, is predetermined. It goes to pay wages and salaries and general expenditures and like that. And so on. And what the real issue is now is that there are two things. And I find that the commentators have not made a lot about this. We continue to depend on a resource on which we should continue because we have it, but it is a resource that is little by little, and in fact now more and more failing us. You're talking about the hydrocarbon sector. You're talking about because the reason why we are having a bigger deficit, I want people to understand what a deficit is. A deficit, if there's one thing I want them to understand, it adds to the national debt. And that means that my children and grandchildren have to pay for errors we made at this point in time. And if we accumulate, and there's nothing wrong in debt.
How do you get the deficit? How does your deficit arise?
Well, it's a simple matter. The government has the power to raise money by taxation. That's the revenue, and the government also spends. more or less, and in a very simple way, the difference between what you
Right.
earn through taxation and what you spend, that's the deficit. If you do not raise that money,
Just can I ask you one other thing?
yeah,
Because just to be clear, because I know, but I know that sometimes he even made the point of saying people say that the GDP and talk about GDP and revenue is not the same thing. And so the fact is, and then I think he made a good point 2 years ago. So you could talk about the GDP of a country and you talk about the revenue. So what's the difference between them?
well, GDP is something of a national revenue, and that's different from government revenue. Government revenue is what the government takes from us for tax, and
Right,
that often is a function of the GDP. The
right.
GDP is the total income. I mean, I'm being very simplistic here, but
You want to keep it simple.
yeah, it's the total income of the country. That's what the GDP is. There are various definitions of it, what you have it.
Right.
And so part of that revenue will be confiscated by the government as taxation. And they also supposed to spend the money that they get from that revenue. The government taxes individuals like ourselves, it taxes companies, it taxes all kinds of things. It raises money through the imports that are coming in and so on. And all these revenues go into the coffers, enters into the consolidated fund, which you then distribute it to various expenditure items. When a government, as very often happens, spends more money than it takes from taxation, that is the measure of that amount is the deficit. And that amount goes to the debt. That adds to the national debt. And how is that financed? It's financed largely by borrowing. It can be financed by selling assets that the government may have, and it can be financed by other non-taxation means that the government may have at its disposal, because it may earn revenue from assets that it has and so on. But it has to finance it, and the government has been financing it largely out of debt, both local and foreign. When the debt is foreign, it's when you have a real problem. In recent times, they have been doing a lot of local borrowing, and that's not bad, because you don't have to pay that back in Trinidad and Tobago dollars. When it's foreign, as happened in the 80s and so on, you have to pay that back in foreign exchange.
I see.
If you can't print the money then and pay back. There are a few countries that could do that. The United States does that regularly. The United States, by the way, is the most indebted country in the world.
But it doesn't matter for them. They have got over 100% of GDP. It doesn't matter because they could go.
They pay their debt
and
back
they could print money
in US dollars. You see?
in US dollars.
But we can't do that. We have to
cannot.
pay it back. So it's a charge on our foreign exchange. And what is happening now, and that's where I started, is that the main source, for all practical purposes, the only source of foreign exchange is the hydrocarbon sector. It's where it's the sector that produces largely more foreign exchange than it spends. Other sectors produce foreign exchange, but I can't tell the figures because I don't have them. I get into the Roger Ho side. But I would suspect that even the manufacturing sector, which is getting better and better, I must say I am very pleased with what I am seeing. They are likely to be either marginally net foreign exchange earners. I mean, I would like them to correct me and buff me if I'm wrong, if they could show me. But they are likely to be net foreign exchange users, because although
That's what I was about to say.
Although we earn a lot of money by exporting our Carib beer and other things like that. Take a Carib as an example. A Carib in a bottle. That's all. You look at it. Everything in there is, apart from the water that they use on, everything in there is based from something that we have to buy, from abroad. So unless
they have their own bottling somewhere in the east.
They have it, but the material for making it, the material for making it, the machinery and so on. You have to think about all of that is foreign exchange being used up. So whereas we do use some local material, a lot of it is going to be foreign. So the manufacturing sector earns foreign exchange. It's apart from the petroleum sector, it's the best earner of foreign exchange. There are sectors like the distribution, the retail sector, absolutely no earning of foreign exchange.
Thank you.
They are users, and I don't mean to call names, but I'm talking about these big groceries and supermarkets. And a governor of the Central Bank got fired for naming one of them, and he named
but he won his action. He won his action. So, he won his action. Yeah.
So yes, we are. There is a lot of foreign exchange that is used up in that. Now, our lifeblood, the lifeblood of countries like Trinidad and Tobago is foreign exchange, because everything we do, and that's why I think this is where we should be concentrating here. We are not producing sufficient foreign exchange, even within the traditional hydrocarbon sector, as I indicated to you. And I heard people mention this. The quantity of oil and gas that we make, gas in particular, because as you know, we have more or less become a gas economy more than an oil economy. But oil still gives us something, so we shouldn't ignore it. What is happening is that the quantity, the production levels are falling and have been falling over time and falling quite noticeably. And notwithstanding recent events that caused the price to increase, Ukraine.
Which one increased?
The price of oil increased. I'm not talking about yesterday.
Okay, anyway, when you finish, I want to comment on what you're saying. So
that notwithstanding favorable prices over, and even now it's quite favorable. It's close to $100.
You could say that.
Yeah, no, it's falling away. It's falling away.
You go ahead.
So we are suffering now from both falling prices and falling production levels. When I talk about when there was the recent outbreak of war in Ukraine, the prices went up considerably, and in fact they have not fallen as far as they would have if a certain.
Talk about natural gas or
both of them, both
crude oil or natural gas.
Yeah, natural gas and crude oil.
I want you to comment when you finish.
Yeah, so that the prices are not favorable to us and the quantities are not favorable to us. So even when and I would say that even if the prices are favorable, we are in a situation where, and it was when, for instance, at the time of the outbreak of war in Ukraine, what we have is a situation where the production levels are not in our favor. So we are fighting a double battle. Now, every time something goes wrong, as it did go wrong in this budgetary cycle, for instance, there was an underestimation of the price, as that's probably what you want to get back to.
I want to talk about that when you finish.
We get that. Dr. Watson. The man in the maxi still asking.
But I want to respond to what he's saying. So hopefully, when if I respond to him, we could get the answer, because I take great exception to what he's saying with regards to because we're talking about the mid-year review and the fact that instead of having a deficit of 5 billion, because he had put the revenue at 54 billion and put the expenditure at 59 billion, and when you go back to the original budget, the determine, I used to have to do it. What we would do is determine what the projected revenue is for the country based on the price of crude oil and more natural gas, because we're a natural gas economy. He spends a lot of time in every budget.
I just want us to pause a bit, and ask ourselves, how does this impact the person on the maxi?
Let me just finish this part.
This is really going to be a fun time, because I really feel very strongly about what I have to say, Dr. Watson.
No, it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is that
we're on the same page.
The gist of the thing I want to say is that we are depending on a product that is failing us. That is fundamentally what I'm saying. And we have not diversified the economy. We have not done anything over the years to find products, goods and services that will replace the hydrocarbon sector, run alongside it. I remember a study we did at the Sartor Lewis Institute, where I was director, and we studied the movement of the thing. And we said we would like to have an economy where instead of accounting for 40% of GDP, the hydrocarbon sector would account for about 20% of GDP, still as resilient as it was at the time, but other sectors contributing to the foreign exchange generation. That has never happened because we have not diversified the economy. We continue, Roger Hussain, someone you mentioned earlier, he put this in a nice way. He said, when you have a batsman like Lara at the other end of the wicket and you are on this end, you could do what the hell you want because you know Lara going to make runs. And that's the way we have continued to work with the hydrocarbon sector. We know the hydrocarbon sector is going to hit a few sixes, but when the hydrocarbon sector fails, that's when Lara failed from time to time, you are in trouble. And that is what is happening. We are in a situation where after 100,000 years, I exaggerate, of course, we are still looking at the fortunes of the hydrocarbon sector to determine what we want to do. And it's failing us both in terms of the quantity being produced and it's failing us in the prices.
This is what I want to say to you, Dr. Watson.
Yes.
And this is why I hold the government to be highly irresponsible, bordering on recklessness. Yes, we know that the price hydrocarbon is the energy sector, whether it is the Atlantic LNG, LNG, which I had Dr. Ram on the show, and he said, we really don't make much out of the LNG. It's like selling the cocoa without making chocolates. When you go down to the point, Lisa, that's where the chocolate's made. So it reminds me of colonialism, but that's beside the point. The point I am making to you is that when he did the budget, which is what we do, when you do a budget, you tend to take a conservative position for two reasons. One, the Heritage Stabilization Act says that once your price of your oil or gas goes over 10%, 60% of that has to be deposited in HSF. And it's governed by legislation which says the conditions under which you can remove money out of it. At one point, it had $6.6 billion. It has 5.5 because he took out 6 times. Yes, he used it for the coronavirus, but the last time he took it out, he put it in the consolidated fund and nothing allowed him to that. But that is not my point. My point is this. When he explained the reason why he put the crude oil, by the way, it has fallen by 8%, and we produce about 53,000 barrels per day, which is why we needed a refinery, because most of the crude oil is not what we produce, is what we refined. And that has been the case for at least 10 years, right? So that's number one. So we can't really talk about the crude oil because in terms of production and numbers, it does not, and that's not that is not your revenue. You have to tax that. And you have the supplementary petroleum tax, which raise the taxes from paying it off when it had to be $60 before you started paying taxes. So it's really not the crude oil because we don't refine it. We have Paria importing it and having to pay, you pay $540 million to Ministry of Energy to pay for rares or to Unipet and National Petroleum for monies owing to the fuel which Paria is importing, right? And we're paying for and refining to do. But the bigger one is the natural gas. Natural gas, and I went back and made sure that I was not wrong. Natural gas, all he said in the budget was he's putting it at $5 to MMBTU. And that's what he said. He said last it was $6. He gave no explanation whatsoever. But guess what? He made his budget speech in October the 2nd in 2023. In the whole of 2023, from January, if you check it back and you go to any source, the price of natural gas never went beyond $2.50. Yes. Right? It never went beyond. Sometimes it was $1.67 if you checked it every day. So by the end of the year, there is no way he could have put the natural gas price as $5 when at no point in time for the entire annual year did it even cross 250. Now we're doing a little better, but it's not anywhere near $5, which is why his deficit for revenue, which so don't pretend he couldn't know. You have to know that whole thing with dragon field, I call it dragging field. It's not a question of whether they could get a license from Venezuela. Shell will not sign the final investment decision. Why? Because they want the Office of Petroleum from America, OFAC, Foreign Assets Control, which is United States, to give them a 15-year license because they are not prepared to put hundreds of millions of dollars in building a gas line from Dragon Field, which is in Venezuela's water, to Trinidad hibiscus platform, unless they get the thing that they are going to get a license for 15 years. They have not done that. This is going on a long time. ConocoPhillips, it was in the papers. They've got an order saying that they could seize any assets of the Venezuelan oil company. That means if Shell goes to build that pipeline, they could seize any of the assets. Shell shareholders are going to put up with that. So why I am very upset, about it, is that it isn't as though you needed a crystal ball to know that the natural gas was in trouble since the beginning, and it has not changed. It has not changed, right? So you knew the revenue position, what the revenue position is. So you come in the middle of the fiscal year to tell us I already have a deficit of 1.8 billion. You knew that. You knew that. You had to have that.
And Karen, they know, Karen, they know that. They know that. But here's my
telling that to Dr. Watson is doing as though the government, well, this happened to them and, they didn't think. You sit down there, you are the Minister of Energy, you are the Minister of Finance. I was in government, you have to know, you have your technocrats advising you, Mister, this is the price, it's not going to go beyond that. Why are you putting it at that rate? Because you know why? Because the deficit between revenue and expenditure, which it can't move too much, was going to be so huge. And you would have to say, is Dragon Field happening, the Lauren happening, right? And we should have, long time ago, started with Manatee, which is in our waters. We started long time ago with the Northeast and started
getting... Yeah, but whatever the reality of their folly, all right? The fact is,
well, I am
they predicted a price that did not work. And they have a situation now where the budget deficit is about to double. I don't think I've ever seen that happen in over a budgetary cycle. And it is a very, very bad situation. So what that means really is that we are now going further into debt, and we are going down the road on. Now, I want to move on to other aspects of that, the budget, but I mean, you want to say something further on this, because it is
the only thing I wanted to say is that this what you mentioned, because I don't like it appearing as though the government was in La Land, poor them, they didn't know this was happening. Oh my God, you knew what was happening, so don't come and put revenue at $5 and give no explanation. So I give them no credit at all. They get no thing from me at all, right? The other thing is foreign exchange. The central bank publishes every month the foreign exchange. So the last in September 2015, it was about 10 billion. Every month, and I have it right here. This is from the central bank, So he'd like to say the data. Yeah, this data up to date, right? September 2023, 5.6 billion. February of 2024, 5.6 billion. March 2024, 5.4. And April, 5.3. And the thing Dr. Arjun says, one of the commentators says, that most of that foreign exchange, which is, you made that point just now, if it is you're borrowing from the local market, you are paying back in TT dollars. How many bond issues has he issued? They have so many bond issues, and those bonds have to be repaid in US dollars. Yes, and according to Dr. Arjun and another commentator, if you take away the debt attached to our foreign exchange, we probably have $400 million in foreign
very little, very little. Right. That's an important point. That if for some reason or the other, that we had to pay back every cent of the foreign debt tomorrow, we'll have no foreign exchange, more or less. that left in us. And the frightening thing is that they are promising that something is going to happen around 2027. Up to today in the newspaper, yeah, Stuart Young mentioned something like that. And we are not sure where how and when this is going to happen. Even if it's true, even if it's true that and there's very little that we can trust coming out of
There you go.
the mouths of the government, because a lot of what they say does not happen. Something that a commentator raised as well, which I thought is not getting the attention that it should get, is the removal of foreign direct investment from this country. People are not investing in the country anymore. And so that there's negative foreign direct
Why is that?
investment.
Why are they not?
Well,
Demanding the maxi taxi, because when you get investment, it means you're going to get a better, people can open up more businesses and more people are employed.
one of the reasons
Everybody benefits.
one of the reasons being put forward is the state of crime in the country. That they are very, very worried about the state of crime in opening businesses and what could happen to their businesses because of the current state of crime. And we are, in fact, it's one of the elephants in the room that they did not treat in the budget at all.
No.
If you don't deal with this issue of crime, you're going to have a real problem along the way. We are degenerating as a society every day into the Wild West, and this is getting every day we hear it's getting worse and worse, and we are sliding downhill. So that there is very little detection rate. There is open and I mean the other day, we had this charade about the vlogger that they
The Sedition Act.
and charged with sedition, while at the same time a man walked into the Port of Spain General Hospital and finished off the job of killing someone right in front.
Another seditious act.
Yeah. No, that's not. Well, whatever. I'm not going into the legality of the
Legality. But you could have used an example of
Yeah.
Prime Minister at one of his meetings, and they want them have one. They don't want you to like one group of people, one race, and they don't want you to like that race, and the other side don't want you to like race. They want to cause racial disunity. Now, in the Sedition Act, any statement intended to create racial disharmony is considered a seditious act. And I believe our Prime Minister, if I'm not wrong, said something to that effect.
I have a layman's view and a strong view of the Sedition Act, which I think is our most outdated piece of legislation.
It's been abolished in England.
Yeah. So I don't like appeals to it at all. And whenever I see an appeal to it, I think that's a.
So why do you think they use it? Why do you think
desperation.
They use it? Why do you think, Dr. Watson, you're a bright man?
Yeah.
So you're a thinker.
I really not so bright for that. I don't know why they use it. Because I think they made fools of themselves. So I can't imagine why
what do you think is the overarching thing that the government is attempting to do in this country and doing it? It was like they say it's a urban myth about the frog going in cool water. And it doesn't realize.
It is true that they are behaving in such a way that they're becoming more and more autocratic. And
there you go.
That is the reality. And your Prime Minister, he really and you see the Constitution allows him to behave in certain ways. You look at all these main appointments, including the President of the Republic, including the Police Commissioner, including the DPP. Everything in the final analysis depends on the Prime Minister.
Not with the DPP. Not with the DPP. That's why he vexed. Vexed because before, can I just say, before the 2006 amendment, and he's on record in the answer. That is when he wasn't Prime Minister. He was MP and thing. He was beyond himself with anger because what had happened before was that under the constitutional provision, who would select certain positions, Chief State Solicitor, DPP, those positions, the Judicial Legal Service Commission would come up with a name. They would give that name to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister would then, it said nobody could be appointed to these positions without the consent of the Prime Minister.
Yes.
So what Rowley has said, Dr. Rowley said, he said, so the Prime Minister can sit around in the quiet of his office Nobody has to know. And he could decide who he wants or doesn't want as DPP. What happened now is he said, but when I was away, it is in the Hansard, go and read the Hansard, it's in the Hansard for you to read it. He said, but when I was away, I come back and I hear now they agree with the opposition because they want the opposition to pass some law. So now, when you're appointing the DPP, the DPP and the deputy DPP, you have to have it go through, the president has to, they have to have the Police Service Commission. They would go through the process, which that is another thing. I don't have time to go through it, but they tried something and they failed. And then it goes to the president, whose only responsibility at that point in time is to take the name that they have chosen and prepare notification and send it to Parliament for them to vote. But on the same day that the then head of the Police Service Commission, Ms. Trott, whatever her name is, I know, anyway, I can't remember the name off the top of my head. When give it to the president, Paula May Weeks, the prime minister just happened to have visited on that same day, and she said that the name was immediately withdrawn. You have no authority to withdraw it in the constitution.
That's reality, but the prime minister has abrogated onto himself, and in a way strengthened the positions given that normally someone with a little more integrity would not do. He is bold-facedly using the powers given to him to have appointed people.
That is why they want to get rid of it. I am saying that. That is why he wants to get rid of it.
Let's come back. Karen, let's come back.
General. Let me just say this. Let me just say this. Before you mentioned this, I'm going to say it. The problem is that once the 2006 amendment says that no one, just like the Auditor General, they cannot be removed. They are insulated from political interference. That is their problem with our DPP. They cannot remove him.
So, Karen, we take that point. Dr. Watson, there's a question that I have on the chat. Somebody says, if the price of oil is declining over the last 5 years, why is the government going in huge projects instead of cutting back on them?
No, the government probably has no other choice but to say it wants to go into these projects. And you remember there is the Venezuelan deal that they are hoping, and whether or not they are
praying too.
There is a possibility that oil will come out in their favor. I mean, we don't know if there will be an outbreak of hostilities. We don't know what is going to happen. You know, there's a visit of a Russian flotilla in the region at this point in time, and it's visiting Venezuela and Cuba. And we don't know to what extent that the Uncle Sam will then make sure that we can't do anything with Dragon and so on.
Well,
but
after the meetings, making sure that, because that thing was supposed to have come to an end with 2025 in November. I think it's May 2025. They ain't put nothing has happened, Mr. Minister. Nothing.
It's very unlikely that anything will happen in the short run. That is the problem. And even the date of 2027 that they're talking about, that's
another one. That is the one.
That's so far off in relatively to what is happening now. That you could say, who is going to sit down and wait for 2027? In the meanwhile, there is a deterioration.
Patrick, that 2027 is in relation to the OFAC they got for the managed one for 2025 to 20 for 2 years. Each one is 2 years. What happening? You think as BP own? Who going to put this BP holder putting any money when you're dealing with Mr. Maduro? Well, who going to do that?
So, Dr. Watson, as we're about to wrap up this part of the program, here's what I want to hear from you. What are 2 messages you want people to take away from the last hour that we've been having this conversation?
I think one of the things that we're going to have to make is there's a political decision that has to be made. That I don't think we're going very far with this current administration in office. I don't think that for all the reasons that we have enunciated here, and I have enunciated before, that we have to find some way to get other people involved in this exercise, and that depending on who comes in, it could be a very, very risky business as well. We could be counting on something that is just not going to happen. There is a tremendous mess in the economy. There's a tremendous mess in the social climate of this country, and I think that is the worst one. I am worried about, and I am a man. I go out and walk early in the morning. I'm walking,
You're
that
afraid
walk.
now.
Yes, I'm afraid to say anything to anybody because
Tell
somebody
them
could
about the Gini coefficient now, because I want Dennise understand the income inequality. That is,
No.
this
All right.
government has encouraged an
Karen,
income
Karen,
inequality in this country.
can we let Dr. Watson give us his story?
I'm going to just telling you why you're afraid to go out.
Yeah. No, and it's a reality that it's getting more and more frightening, and I am personally more and more afraid. And home invasions is a reality, and this taxation of small businesses and so on that people are making. You don't know when they're going to start taxing us in houses. Telling us, well, if you're living in this area, you have to pay me a tax.
Exactly.
This situation is not good, and it's getting worse. Anytime you see somebody strange in your street, you're not welcoming. You're suspicious. We have a neighborhood watch, and every time somebody unfamiliar walks into the street, up the antennas, and everybody's seeing this person walking down the street and so on. And that's not a nice thing. I mean, I wouldn't like to go into an area where that somebody's doing that to me. And yet we are so uneasy with everything that is happening. So the crime situation, I think, is something that we have to deal with first and foremost. It's interconnected with the
economy.
Yeah, but it's more than that, because there's a criminal economy that is now thriving.
Well, we know that.
And if we don't deal with that, it's going to be. The unfortunate thing is those to whom we look for help are very often part of that criminal economy.
Thank you very much.
The police.
You're talking the truth.
Yeah.
You're talking the truth.
So,
and just by the way, before Doctor, because I just want to get it in, because I know you're going just now. Because I got, I don't like when the Minister of Finance and he had the Minister of Energy, both of them talking fairy tales. They love to tell you fairy tales. Look at the inflation, 0.8. You would think that's not good. It would be good if the economy was thriving. When you have 0.8 as the inflation rate.
I am telling you something though.
And what about the repo rate?
Sometimes the figures may not reflect what people are seeing in the reality.
Right.
I do the market in our house. And I went into the market on Saturday, and I find things were extremely high. Around this time of the year, tomatoes are usually about $10 to $12 a pound. Yes. Tomatoes are closer to $20 a pound.
And you went in the market, eh?
Yeah, Baigan is up at that level as well. Planted. You know what is not so expensive? What we call Irish potatoes. The English.
Transportation has gone up too.
Yeah. Everything is very expensive. So when I used to spend about a year and a half ago about $200, I'm spending $400. It's a double.
Who is the most affected by what's going on? Not the 1%,
No, this is what I'm saying. It's at that level that I'm saying. So when I hear inflation is low, and I think, by the way, inflation is a rate of increase. If that price is already high, any rate of increase is bad. If you understand what I'm saying.
When it's 0.8, because nothing happening, nobody's spending.
Yes, that is true.
Nobody's spending. That is why it is so low, because nobody's spending. They have no confidence in the economy, and that's why the repo rate is 3.50 for the last 5 years. Why? Because there's nobody spending money. They only want to pull up. My responsibility, Dennise, I'm very sorry. Maybe it's the politician in me. Maybe having been a minister that's part of me. But I feel a great responsibility that when these ministers come and give you a Nancy story that pigs could fly and all that nonsense, people have to understand that when they're telling you things about the inflation rate and the unemployment rate as if that's good, when they talk about the labor force participation, which we can't talk about now, they do not educate people about the reality of the economy is in a mess.
It's very, very messy. It's very, very, and it's not. The point, if I want to leave one, this thing is not going to get better in the short run. I'm telling you that it's going to get very, very bad. It's going to get worse.
Yeah.
So you're saying that in the short run, we are going to continue to have this difficulty with crime, difficulty with the increase in prices of food, so that people are going to continue to struggle in the short run.
The short run is not so short.
And it's a little bit further than the short run, because what we are counting on are the prices of the energy products, and they are not on our side.
And if you read articles on it, you know that the price of natural gas is not going to go very.
And in addition, our production level. So even if something drastic should happen and the price should shoot up, we are not going to benefit tremendously, because the production levels are very, very low.
Don't tell Stuart Young that.
On behalf of the people in the Maxi, I want to thank you all for telling us that we are in for trouble. Yes. And over the short to medium term, we will not be surviving in this country. How unfortunate. But thank you very much, Dr.
Watson. Who knew both you and me would be on the same page, eh?
No problem.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, then.
Take care, and thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, athlete, Dr. Patrick Watson.
Yes, athlete, man. I was only Motley, but now I have to think about Motley and think about Watson.
Motley was one of my heroes.
Yeah, but you're showing them up. You get national. You get the
Hey, Motley went to QRC and Cambridge. Motley is more than a hero.
On Cambridge if you want.
Karen and Patrick. Bye. I just want to reach out to our listeners and our viewers and ask you to please call. We have some comments that you've made that are in the chat, and we've used some of those comments. But please reach out to us. The numbers that you can call are 222-TALK. That's 222-8255. Or if you're outside of Trinidad and Tobago, there's a toll-free number that you can call. It's 866-525-1099. So I'll repeat those numbers for you: 222-TALK or 222-8255. Or if you're toll-free, it's 866-525-1099. What a wonderful conversation, Karen.
I just want to tell you, Dennise, I warned you. You know that he told you that before.
I know that.
Take over from here.
It's wonderful. Let's welcome Indira Sajuan. Indira, welcome to the show. It's so happy to have you. I love your background, looking in the black and white and so on. Absolutely lovely, my dear. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Dennise. Thank you, Karen. Actually joined towards the end of Professor Watson. So I heard the last bit of banter that took place. So I'm really wondering, after you've probably had Prof for about an hour, do you really need another economist?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And here's a context of it. I keep saying to every economist and every PhD and every bright person who comes onto this show, I keep saying to them, let's talk to the person in the maxi taxi so they understand what you're talking about. But just before we begin, Indira, I sent you a little note asking you that fun question. What about you that we don't know?
Well, I'm going to piggyback off how you all ended with Prof. Watson in terms of finding about that he was into sports. What people don't know, but when I was on campus at UE, St. Augustine, I was in the Faculty of Social Sciences, and we had intercampus cricket, and I played cricket for the women's team. In fact, I was a star player, bowler and batswoman, The crowds used to come out to look at us, and I was, amongst one of the stars who played cricket. In fact, even up to now, my friends, joke about that. And coming in the quadrangle between the big calf and the small calf, we used to play cricket in that area. Yes.
So Indira, do you still play cricket?
Oh gosh, no, girl. No, I play lawn tennis rather than cricket now. As an older person. Only for fun, if the family goes out, if we by the beach or something, and we knock in some. But that's about it.
Lovely, lovely. So Indira Sajuan was the queen cricketer on campus. Lovely to hear that.
And I have a feeling they used to come out not only to see you Not because you were such a good cricketer, but because they wanted to come and see
Karen,
you. I just have a
Karen.
feeling. I just have a feeling. I just guessing. I don't know. But can I ask you something, which I really, if you don't mind, let me ask, because I do know, I do not know the answer, and I don't know how you get to the answer. So it will be helpful to get the answer on this. When they talk about the projection for our debt to GDP, first of all, I explain that to people, but also we have said that they're using as a base year 2015, and they're saying that our debt position, when you really look at it, is negative 20%. So it is less, it is worse off than it was 17 years ago. Yet there are some years, okay, so you're looking puzzled, so I got the wrong
Yeah,
information. And
yeah.
some of the years we see that we have positive growth in some years, 1 or 2 years, and it's projected that we would have positive growth of 2 point something for
2.4.
2024. So I just want to know, when persons talk about overall our debt position, what is it really? How do you come to this using a base figure and coming to any figure as to what our debt position is, and what does that mean when you say
Well,
70% of
sure,
GDP? What that means?
sure. Okay, so the concept of using a base year means that we're comparing what happens in years after that to that particular year. Okay, so in this case, I think you referenced 2015. And what we're concerned about is this notion of real growth. Or if we look at thinking about debt, we want to consider what real debt is. Real debt or real growth means that we have removed the any impact of inflation. And inflation has been something that has been
And when you say
extremely high.
inflation, what do you mean by that?
Inflation is when the price of something goes up. The
Mhm.
volume hasn't gone up. So let's take a pen, for example. So I guess the price of oil would be a good example. 1 year it is $35 per barrel, and then suddenly there's war someplace and affects supply, and the price can double to $75 per barrel. The barrel hasn't changed. It's still the 1 barrel of oil, but suddenly the price is not $35 anymore, but it is $75. So
Right.
what it means is, yes. So what it means is that inflation has caused the value, the amount of money that we're getting for the gallon of oil, to move from $35 to $75, but the amount that we're producing has not changed. Real growth real growth takes place when the volume of what we are producing increases while we hold the price of the item constant. So let's not change the price, but let's increase the production. And then if you have an increase, then that is real growth. And that is what we want to be happening in any economy. Okay?
So just to be clear, I'm going to be the maxi taxi person.
Yes.
So it was $35 last year, and
Mm-hmm.
in the 20, let's say 2023, it was $35. In 2024, it's still $35, but instead of producing 10 barrels, you're producing 100 barrels. So you really grew, because it
Correct.
would be growth because the price hasn't gone up, but the volume has increased. So it means that your whatever the product is, whether it's oil or pens or whatever you want to choose, you can say that the economy is growing, because it is not because the price has changed, but it's because the volume of what you're producing has increased. And if the price has changed, that's even better, right?
Even better. And that is ideally what we want. That is a reflection of real growth.
Right.
Okay? Right? Now, we have had real growth between 2021 to 2023. We have, in fact, had real growth. That growth, though, has not come from the energy sector, which is the mainstay of the economy. In the energy sector, we have earned more money, just like we described,
Mhm.
not because we were producing more oil and gas, because actually we were producing less,
Mhm.
but because the price of those items went up following the war in Ukraine and Russia, following what is happening in the Red Seas with respect to piracy and affecting supplies. So all of those things, which we have no control over, have caused the price of what we are producing to go up. And we benefited in real terms, so we got more money out of that. But these sectors have contracted, and that is why in 2023, the energy sector, which makes up oil and gas, was projected at the beginning of the fiscal year, so which was in around September when the budget was read. The budget was read, and we had hoped that in 2023, the energy sector would have grown by 2.9% because there was an expectation that some fields courtesy information that would have been received by organizations like BP, that the supply would have increased. But it did not pan out. It did not pan out in 2023. And in fact, the energy sector, that is oil and gas, actually contracted by 3.1%. Right? So the energy sector, oil and gas, contracted by 3.1, but we still had positive growth, positive real. But it seems confusing, right? It seems confusing.
So the debt then, how do
So the
you,
question is, where did the growth come from?
yes, so when they say that the because I read it
The
so
growth
often
came,
that our economy has contracted by 20%. But that when you look at the fiscal deficit over that period, I don't I want you to explain how they come to the
let's not worry about the deficit.
Okay.
Yeah, let's not worry about the deficit. Let's take the overall growth thing that we call gross domestic product, right? GDP, right? So we had hoped in 2023 that energy, so if we take the economy, we could break it down, break it into pockets. The energy sector and the non-energy sector. The energy sector comprises oil and gas. The non-energy sector comprises the petrochemicals, which is ammonia, methanol, urea, etc., because of an accounting change that the ministry did, plus things like food and beverage, trade, quarrying and mining and tourism and any of those other things would fall, would fall under non-energy, okay? So as I repeating again, 2023, there was negative growth in the energy sector, yet overall, the economy grew by 2.1%. That growth came from the non-energy sector.
Okay. Right.
Now, but let's drill down further. Where within the non-energy sector did that growth come from? And this is what is concerning. And this is why we need to be concerned. It didn't come from petrochemicals.
Right.
So petrochemicals actually contracted in 2023. The growth that we see came from trade and repairs. It grew by 10% in real terms.
Okay.
So it means the economic activity that took place in the retail sector expanded significantly. Retail. So we're very good at buying from the rest of the world, slapping on a markup and either selling to ourselves or maybe re-exporting to the islands.
Right.
10% growth took place there. There was also growth in quarry and in mining and quarrying sector. There was some amount of growth. In traditional manufacturing, in which food and beverage is the largest element, there was growth of 1.6%. Now, ideally, we would have liked to see a 10% growth under manufacturing rather than under retail. You following me?
Yes, yes. It's not for me, the taxi driver, passenger in the taxi.
Right. I'm hoping, yes. So the message to the taxi driver is and that is why, if you look at the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, you will see the ministers are always opening a new mall. I mean, look at the proliferation of shopping malls that has happened over the last few years. But when you go into those shopping malls, what's on sale? Mostly imported goods and services. Am I correct?
Yes, yes.
So so we continue to be really good shopkeepers in Trinidad and Tobago. The retail sector is blossoming. However, the sectors in which we add real value, which means we take our cocoa or we take our peppers and we add value, we're not seeing growth in those sectors. And that's where we need to see the growth happening, but it's not happening. So, the reality is there was a small amount of growth, but this small amount of growth does not reflect any transformation in the structure of the economy that augurs well for us. So if we take trade, what kind of jobs are generated in retail and trade? We have attendants in stores. It's not really high-end jobs, right? It's not jobs that are paying high wages and salaries. So it means that basically the jobs that are being generated are being generated at the lower end. Tourism, which we pay very little attention to, and while we pay no attention to it, our sister islands like West Grenada, St. Vincent, all of these islands, Jamaica, Barbados, tourism has been flourishing. In fact, the Caribbean tourism, it has grown at a rate faster than the rate of growth of global tourism. We're leading the way. Now, I'm saying we because I'm adding us to tourism. I'm adding us to the rest of the Caribbean. But it has nothing to do with Trinidad and Tobago. We're not benefiting from there because the number of arrivals, the number of people coming in, where we count and we kind of value tourism, we're still below the 2009 levels for arrivals in tourism. So tourism in Trinidad and Tobago is still suffering neglect, while tourism in our sister islands it's really booming.
And Indira,
Okay,
Indira,
so
I want to make a comment about that tourism. The new tourism company has had 4 CEOs
Yes.
in a very short time. And
Yeah.
if you can't even keep your
Yes.
CEOs,
Yes.
your strategic plan will not work.
Yeah.
So the point you're making that the region is doing better and increasing in terms of tourism, but Trinidad is not.
Yeah.
You know, so that when we look at other diversification options, then we're still going back to oil and gas. That is where we expect money to come from, and that is not happening.
Yeah. I
because
wanted to.
Denise, our idea of diversification is simply to identify a sector, set up a state enterprise in order to say, okay, that you have responsibility for it. And then that's the end of the day. There's no accountability. There are no KPIs that are set, no objectives that are said, okay, this is what we're going to achieve over the next year. And therefore nobody is held to account for actually growing the thing. And you said don't only have one tourism company, we have two. We have one for Trinidad and one for Tobago. Let us not forget that. So we closed down the one and we opened two. We said, okay, the two will give us better results, but the two is not giving us better results. And we could talk about the same thing with respect to cocoa, with respect to yachting, with respect to so many of the low-hanging fruits. And
Yeah.
while I agree with Patrick that there's no quick fix to this problem that we have,
Yeah.
there's no quick fix, but there is sufficient infrastructure, there is sufficient base in many smaller sectors that if we remove the bureaucratic impediments and we provide the support that is required, we could have growth that can generate more sustainable employment for especially for our young people. We could probably stem the brain drain. I mean, of course, all of it has to be crime is a real major issue, but I'm saying there are low-hanging fruits around us that even as we continue to go after the dragon, and we have to go after the dragon because we can't see the energy sector shut down, so we have
we
no
don't
choice but to go after the
What about Guyana?
Huh?
We could go after Guyana and we could go after. Anyway, that's another. I won't revisit that.
Yeah, but remember, we need a supply of natural gas to feed into the
I know, I
infrastructure of
understand that.
plants.
Yeah, but the
Yeah,
problem
that requires.
it's not Venezuela. The problem is America. And if Trump wins, we could. Anyway, that's a
Well, I
whole
agree
other
with you.
discussion.
We're in the same boat. That's
But
why
I
I
want to
said
say
if the
something
dragon
that
happens,
you had said a few years back, and actually when you said it, it was an aha moment really for me, and that is dealing with the issue that comes up all the time of devaluation. The IMF, everybody says our money is overvalued. It is not. It should be about $10 or something like that. But what you said when an argument against devaluation, which was a very good argument, which is consistent with what you're talking about with the retail sector. Those who are in the manufacturing sector, and we're not talking about the petroleum side, but the non-petroleum manufacturing sector, much of the input into creating of the product is imported, and you import it using the US dollars. So the issue is that your competitiveness will be lost if you devalue the dollar. Then you're paying more for that whatever input that you need for your product that you're manufacturing. You tend to go for the tin of corn, or you tend to go for the pigeon peas. I don't know if they're going pigeon peas somewhere in Trinidad, I don't know. or they tend to go for the red beans. I don't know where they're growing, but anyway, they're going somewhere I don't know. But you understand, they have to import those things. And when they import those things, if you have to increase the value of our dollar, it means that when we try to sell it, particularly within the Caribbean region, I think that's our biggest market. When we try to sell within the Caribbean region, we lose our competitive advantage we have because of the fact that we would lose the valuation would do that. And that is the issue. And just say one last thing is that's the issue when they talk about the foreign exchange, because yes, you made it the right point. Retail, 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 which means that you are buying and selling, but you're not producing. That is the production. That is how you earn foreign exchange. You do not earn foreign exchange by buying something and selling it here. What you are doing is using up the foreign exchange. So go and buy the things from wherever part of the world because they want US to be paid in US currency. And many times they are not depositing that money in Trinidad, their profits, but deposited in some account they have abroad. So the real issue is dealing with the productivity issue. Do you still feel that same way about devaluation that you expressed a few years back when you mentioned the risk of devaluation?
Yes, Karen, devaluation is a chicken and egg situation for economy as open and as dependent on foreign exchange as it's trying to be. Okay. That being said, the reality is what it is on the ground. We have a serious foreign exchange shortage. And we have that shortage because the number of sectors that generate foreign exchange is extremely limited. Right? It's basically the energy sector and a little element in non-energy manufacturing that earns foreign exchange. But yes, I reinforce the point that even that manufacturing that earns foreign exchange is a heavy user of foreign exchange as well, because they need to buy. But that's the nature of the world. The nature of the world is where one marketplace, global value chains, necessitate that if I want to produce something, I could look to the world and I could source it from the cheapest source. I could bring it in, I could use it and add value and make something else, and then I
Add
could
value,
re-export it. And
exactly.
that has tremendous value. But the economy finds itself in a situation where we have a serious foreign exchange problem. What do? You have two options available to you. You either devalue the currency so that you make it more expensive.
To import.
You start to aggressively attempt to find new ways to earn a foreign exchange. This is not a conversation. You said to me a few years ago, I said that.
Yeah.
Imagine if a few years ago, and Karen, I have been singing this song, not just a few years now, but well
Yeah.
over 20, 25 years ago.
Wow.
Imagine if since then we had done what was required in terms of shoring up alternative sectors and putting them on a pathway to sustainable export competitiveness. We wouldn't be where we are today. I want to
No.
come back to the islands as a reference point with respect to there's no shortage of foreign exchange. If you go to Grenada, you go to St. Vincent, there's no shortage of foreign exchange.
Mm-hmm.
The people will refuse if you want to just change. You can't change foreign exchange on the street. Here, if somebody have $100 and come to your store, they'll get a rate that is higher than the market rate because it's so scarce. Not happening in these islands because tourism is so buoyant. You know, tourism. When you advise households, and this I'm speaking to the taxi driver. Taxi driver is in a the taxi driver is in a job where every day he's bringing in money. Every single day he's bringing in money. So he's continuously flushed with cash in order to meet the needs that he has. Right?
And then you spend
Tourism
that
is one of
money,
those
and that helps to build the economy.
multiplies.
And it
And
multiplying
tourism
it.
is, yes. So tourism is much like that. It is not oil and gas where you have a LNG train where that train costs billions of US dollars. And then when you export, you're going to be earning large sums of US dollars. The tourism sector is dependent on individual consumers coming in. But if you increase that numbers, it is at the bottom of the economy where you bring that US dollars and you circulate it and you allow it to be able to multiply. And that is what you see happening in the smaller islands. And I don't talk off the top of my head. I talk on the basis of research that I just did
Right.
for UNECLA in these islands, looking at looking at their tourism sectors.
Mm-hmm.
And we, for some reason, do not seem to understand that this is a really low-hanging fruit that we really need to exploit in a more aggressive
Why you
manner.
think so? I mean,
Okay.
Dennise, you were very much involved, and at one time, long before I became formally involved in politics, I was on the board of TIDCO. So that's probably I also have a weakness to, and I actually wrote an article on what I call cultural tourism. You look at do your SWOT analysis, and what do you have that the other countries around you do not have? What you have is what countries like Mauritius has. And Mauritius went through a similar thing in Trinidad, as in Trinidad, when the sugarcane no longer became, that part of the economy collapsed. And so they had to look at other ways of earning economy. And what they looked at is they have a same size of population, about 1.1 million, they're just off the coast of Africa. And the population is Chinese, Indian, African, white, all the different races, all the different religions, all the different cultures, and they develop their cultural tourism. And Trinidad and Tobago has the University of Trinidad and Tobago. They have Arthur Lockyer School of Business. They have NAPA, SAPA. They have all those stadia. They have all these people that are trained in. We know the best way to have what you call event planning, and we have the temple by the sea. We have Paramin that this guy is a painter, very, very wealthy man, can develop the whole Paramin, not only for Christmas, but also for Carnival. We have the food. I don't think there's any country that has the variety of food. If you went to in Trinidad for breakfast, you have sada roti, you have baigan, toka, you have
Karen.
potato.
So Karen, what is your question?
So what I'm saying is I'm agreeing with Indira. It has always troubled me. And I wrote an article that I say I'm going to write it because nobody's going to say that I just didn't say anything. Why have we not pursued cultural tourism? We have the advantage with Steel Band, Calypso, Chutney.
Karen, can I interrupt you, Karen?
Go
Let me
ahead.
interrupt you to say that
Yes.
cultural tourism as a growth sector has been identified in Trinidad and Tobago well over 20 years. We have
And what happened?
simply not done the work. You
Okay.
can't just identify a sector, Karen, and just leave it on its own and hope for the best. In the
Right.
same way, you see the model that we use for oil and gas?
You're right.
That's the kind of model we needed to replicate in any new sector that we want to develop.
Value
But
added.
we have not done. There's one more point I want to make on the issue of the forex. And while the issue of devaluation concerns me, something that we need to know though is that businesses are in fact pricing not on the basis of the official exchange rate, but actually on the basis of the black market rate. So the cost that they factor in is what they're paying on the black market, not the official rate. So in many ways, the government continues to prop up our foreign exchange rate at the 6.79 to 1, but the business community is not using that as a conversion rate because they can't, because very often, especially small businesses, they can't access the foreign exchange on the official market. So they have to go and source it on the black market, and therefore when they cost their products, they have to cost it on the basis of what the black market rate is, which then begs the question as to whether it is sensible at this point in time to maintain the official rate, or maybe we need to potentially allow the rate to slide a little bit so that we can recalibrate, we can reset, and then look to aggressively, develop any sectors that we need to. But what concerns me is that, I feel like a broken record. I keep year after year having the same conversation about what do we need to do when we should be saying, did we do? And you talk about Mauritius, and you're on point. These are countries that found themselves in a situation, and they decided they had to do things aggressively in order to transform the productive structures of the economy if they were to survive sustainably. And they put the measures in place, and they realize the benefit from it. Dubai is another country, case in point. I talk about that repeatedly. A desert island that had oil and gas, but made a decision very early in the day that we oil and gas was not going to, it was
Allah.
not going to contribute more than single digit to our GDP. We were going to make sure it multiplied. And I don't want to monopolize the show, but earlier o'clock we were talking about growth, but you were asking the question about debt to GDP, and for people to try to grapple and
Right,
understand that.
right.
Debt, so GDP is the value, the total value of goods and services that a country produces within a year, right? A fiscal year. And it is the value of that, how much, what that totals to. So it adds up the value of work that you did, the value of work that Dennise did, the amount of goods that comes out, the amount of oil we produce, the amount of gas we produce, the amount of soft drink, whatever, the amount of money that is generated in entertainment, in all the different sectors, and it adds it up, and it gets the total value of that goods and services that we produce, right? The debt is the amount of money that the government owes because government borrows money in order to do different things. Ideally, government should be borrowing money in order to use it for investment purpose,
Right.
right? To grow the new sectors that we talk about. And if you're putting down a road, we should know what why you're putting down our road. It should not be just to connect two different communities, but it should be that along the road you are opening economic space, and we should know what the economic space is that you're opening in order to generate employment, etc. Right? So that is the reason, but why government should borrow? Unfortunately, by and large, government has been borrowing more so to deal with recurrent expenditure, to deal with the wages and the salaries, and to deal with the transfers and subsidies
And
and
what
the
does that
handout
mean?
programs.
What does that mean? I'm talking for the maxi taxi driver to
Yeah,
let them
it
understand
means
that the money
it
that they
means
are
that if
borrowing.
it means that is not used in order to produce goods and services. It is not used in order to grow the economy. That it doesn't use.
Right.
It's not used to create wealth. So the debt to GDP means that you take the amount of debt. So if your GDP is $100, if you say you produce $100 of goods in that year, and let's say you borrow $20,
Mhm.
20 divided by the 100 gives you a debt to GDP ratio, right? So that is the 20. How much is that? Karen, help me. To one
I'm not
one
present.
fifth. Yeah, one fifth as a percentage is 20,
One fifth, yeah.
20%,
Yeah.
right? So
Oh,
your
one fifth
GDP, your
of okay.
debt to GDP ratio is $20. And just like we talk about real versus
So for every
nominal
dollar
value,
you owe 20 cents.
correct, exactly, right? Now the debt to GDP ratio is we could either look at it in real terms where we remove the inflationary impact, or we could look at it in money terms, right? So in this, just immediately after COVID, when the price of oil and gas skyrocketed,
Yeah.
we didn't do anything. We didn't produce a barrel more or MMBTU
So,
more of gas, but suddenly we was earning this larger amount of money because the price
yeah,
went up, right?
exactly.
And therefore, but the debt didn't change. The debt remained the same thing. But now, instead of dividing the 20 by 100, you was dividing the 20 by 200, which then meant your debt to GDP ratio moved from 20% to 10%.
It now it's I think
Instead
it's
of all
about
this,
72. I think we owe 72 cents on the dollar now, eh? And
right, exactly. So what I was just,
Indira, as you're saying that the ridiculous thing was that when we made all that money in 2022, when the price of oil and gas went shooting through the roof, so we were made had nothing to do with us. It was in spite of us, not because of us, right? When it did, it was in the papers. What did he do? He said, they were we expected that we would have reached 76% to GDP, so we'd owe 76 cents to the dollar. But because they made so much money, it allowed them to have more money than they anticipated. So it dropped to about 70 cents to the dollar. And but you know what he
correct.
did?
That
He
is
borrowed $2 billion. And so that he ended up, instead of using that opportunity to reduce the debt more, he used that opportunity to increase the debt because we had more money. So the debt to GDP would not go up to 76. It stays around 72 cents to the dollar. But what in fact happened was because we made more money, nothing to do with what the minister did, nothing to do with what the government did, nothing to do with diversifying. And I want to just say to your point, Indira, you said a good model really is Point Lisa. And you know why that's a good model? I always say this: cocoa and coffee are high end. Those are high end. You go to European countries, right? And you package it the right way and you market it the right way. Don't go and send them your cocoa, your cocoa for them to send back Cadbury chocolates for you. You take your cocoa, and now there's some people doing it already. They're putting it in all kinds of coconut, guava, whatever, packaging it beautifully. And if the cocoa as the natural gas, then let's say they're using that, is $5. By the time they sell it outside, they can make about 100 US from that same cocoa. So we need to
Yeah.
use the petrochemical thing and add value.
But here is the challenge. Here is a challenge with that. Yeah, but here is a challenge with that, Karen. So everything that you say, very valid. I mean, again, cocoa is something I've been talking about for a very long time. We have fine flavor cocoa. Our cocoa isn't used to make Charles chocolate. It's not for that purpose. It is flavoring chocolate. It is used in really high end. It is high in antioxidants, so the health benefits from it is tremendous. Okay, so any amount of cocoa we could produce, we can sell at premium
Cocoa, we're
prices.
the only country with Tintaro
Yeah,
cocoa. They're one of the best cocoas in the world.
Yes, correct. Once the quality is up to par with respect to the beans, we call a really high price on the international market. That said, and in addition to that, we're currently in a situation where the expectation is that there's going to be a global shortage of cocoa. It is a global shortage of cocoa. I mean, there's less. What immediately happens to price? Prices rise. So there's a potential for the price of our cocoa to rise even more. But what is happening with the production of our cocoa beans? It is falling. Again, let's come back to policy. At the policy level, successive governments have identified cocoa industry, value adding into chocolates, etc., as a premium industry, as a priority industry for development. And yet, Dennise and Karen, so there was a paper done, again, cocoa is an area that I've done a lot of work, a lot of research on. Even as we have identified this, the production of cocoa continues to fall in Trinidad and Tobago. In the 1970s, we used to produce 35,000 tons. Last year, we were at 500.
My God.
Compared to 30.
And what
So
about
look at what has
you
happened.
mentioned too? The sugar, because Barbados does this. Barbados does
Okay,
not
but
have
before
a
we get
state
to sugar,
industry.
Get to sugar. Just now. Indira.
Yeah.
Indira, you said
Yeah.
it moved from 35,000 tons
1,000, yes, to
100 tons.
500 tons, exactly. And that has been declining. We have estates that are simply lying idle. We have at the University of the West Indies, we have the oldest gene bank in the world. We have the Cocoa Research Center at the university. Now, things are happening, as Karen said. There are individual persons who, because when the government closed down the cocoa board, which was extremely inefficient, it didn't replace it with anything to support the farmers. And therefore, the farmers were now left to try to negotiate prices on their own. And they were never trained to do that, and therefore they were having a lot of trouble. And a lot of individual producers made a decision to move up the value chain. The Cocoa Research Center offers a course in chocolate making. Many of them did it, and they started to experiment and to actually make their own cocoa. In fact, what's his name? Marshall Montano, his mom.
Yeah, I know about that.
In the valley, they brought out a line. Yeah, in fact, they got a huge grant from the government, over $500,000, to invest in equipment for it. But the problem is, if you want to grow a sector, you can't grow it piecemeal. It can't be ad hoc. It has to be, you have to take it. You have to bring all the stakeholders together. You have to say, okay, identify what the strengths are, what our weaknesses are, what is the support that the government needs to provide to it, what is the role of private sector, what's the role of financing. We need to set goals and targets where we want to take this industry, based on the research in terms of what the global market and the research is excellent. There's a strong case, not just for producing beans that we could sell at premium price or producing chocolates, because producing chocolates, there's a lot of issues to deal with. Remember, when you produce chocolate and you're exporting it, the integrity of the product has to be maintained. So yeah, it has to go in reefer containers. You have to be producing volume. You have to have the capacity
They can charge
to
the
produce
price.
containers. Yeah, so that when it reaches the destination, it doesn't look warped, but it looks good. But more than that, remember I said high antioxidant. There is room for cocoa tourism, chocolate tourism, which is a big thing in Europe. We have the potential to be able to branch off into these areas. Our spas, for example, allow UAE should be engaged in research and development in terms of how can we use our cocoa, the healthy nature of it, to create products that can be used in our spas, and then we could then export. But you have to have a cohesive and a comprehensive plan of action, and then you have to work it. You have to work it. You can't just talk it. You can't just identify it. You can't just say it's going to be a champagne. It's like champagne, and you're allowing it to die. It makes no sense.
Yeah, it's really true. And just let me say about the sugarcane. The reason why I mention it is because I think there's a farmer here in Trinidad that grows organic sugar. And I know in Barbados in St. John's Parish, and they grow sugar cane there, but only for their rum production. Trinidad is well known and understood for its rums. You can have a rum, a punch of crema flavored with I don't know whatever thing that we have there, and it's a lot. What we are not doing is developing value added using sugar to produce high end alcoholic products. Just like how you have Bailey's cream, which they use from their whiskey, we could be making the equivalent using our rum. And that is what and that is what Barbados does. That's what we are doing. Dennise,
What I think our issue is that we do not have a vision,
right.
and we have not supported that by any objective. So what we're doing is we're picking up things. We feel to do this today, we feel to do that tomorrow, and we're doing those things. We're not coming up with a structured approach. I've been talking about that for a long time. Our structures, our systems, our processes have failed. And we can't just wake up a morning and say, okay, we're going to start back planting, doing sugarcane and creating sugar. You can't do that. You have to ask yourself, what is it? And what do we need? And then you need to go back and say, well, okay, if this is what we're doing, then what kind of training do we need to have? How are we getting our young people to buy into this vision and be able to learn and be able to do things? We're not doing that. We're a society in which I think, and I've said it, that what we do is if you have a contact, you will get a contract. So we continue to be looking at contract awards and not, okay, what is the development of the country? What can we do to make the entire place better? That just isn't happening.
But
You had experience
but
with
Dennise,
tourism.
I want to say to you,
With that.
Dennise,
With tourism.
identifying the sectors is the role of the government, and identifying the sectors, developing the policy and legislative framework within which it makes a sense. That is the role of the government, maybe in partnership with the private sector, which is all well and good, but individual persons, they could get upon. Let's look at the whole area of agriculture, right? There are individual people who are doing amazing stuff in Trinidad. You go to the grocery now and you can get. There was a time when you see what looked like fresh mushrooms, it was imported. Now a lot of the fresh mushrooms that you're seeing on the shelf is actually being grown locally. And being grown locally within building structures, from my understanding. What is being done at the level of the state to support this, to make it into a larger, more productive sector that could potentially get to the point where it is exporting? And that's just one example. So we may see the mushrooms for the next couple of weeks, and then suddenly it will disappear.
Yeah.
Suddenly it will disappear because the individual person simply on his own cannot sustain it.
So
So
What
the
do
absence
you
of
say,
division and the
Indira?
will.
But we go back to that at the bottom of
Sorry.
it, crime situation is one of the situations that is preventing people in all kinds of ways. Because, for example, people involved in agriculture, they have real difficulty protecting created because feeling it. And we don't have the systems and structures that say, no, that is not properly done. So what are we going to do to prevent people from the crime happening in their agricultural sector? So that it goes back to where do we see this country? And if that's where we see this country, how are we going to get there? Unless we have that, then we are going to continue to be in this condition for as long as I don't know.
And you were to say something, Indira?
No,
Indira?
I'm agreeing with what Dennise said. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm agreeing. Yes.
Yeah, because when Professor Watson was on, he was saying that in terms of planning, there's no planning, but there is to some extent planning, and I'll tell you why. At least from my experience, I can't talk about anybody else's experience, but I just could speak from my experience. You can tell where the government priorities are by the amount that it allocates to particular um, one indicator allocates or appropriates to a particular ministry. So, example, tourism gets next to nothing. I saw that tourism got $21 million. I mean, I know you're not serious, right? What you gonna do with $21 million? Where are you going? And sometimes, in all fairness, from my experience, I don't know what is going on, but I'm just saying from my experience, there are some ministers who probably want to do more, who would love to do more, and would like to argue and put forward papers and probably bring in experts and consultants to bring forward their recommendations to do more in the tourism sector, as an example, or in the agricultural sector. But oftentimes, they are not the ones that have the voice in the cabinet. That's the facts. They are not the ones where the government has a particular outlook, and its outlook may be energy focused. And the persons who have the power within the cabinet are certain persons who, at the end of the day, call the shots. So what I'm trying to say that yes, the government needs to do more, but sometimes the ministers themselves would, I am sure, like to do more than they do, but they are prevented because they simply not allocated the funds in order to grow that particular aspect of the economy.
And
That is my experience.
I accept that you have that experience, but I
Yeah.
am not letting them get away with that argument. You are an MP, you're a minister. Come
Yeah.
on, do what is your legacy?
Yeah.
All of them now, when you ask themselves, what is your legacy in 10 years'
Social
time?
financial.
Well,
Preventing the economy of persons, a line running through CL Financial and Clico and Republic Bank, preventing, no, I'm serious, preventing the economy at a time when oil was $35 a barrel, preventing a crash of the economy. That, to me, is my contribution. Apart
I
from
was being personal, Karen. I was not being personal.
it was
But
to be me.
about
Me.
I'm saying that a lot of our ministers, when they ask themselves, what is my legacy? There's
Okay.
not going to be a good answer.
You
But
get
we're
not.
about
You
to,
don't
we're
look at us.
almost towards the end of this program, Indira, and I just want you to
Yeah.
share with us what are some of your thoughts that you'd like to remain after this hour with us?
Well, I think we talk a lot about the role of government, but I think government gets away with not doing what is necessary in large part because the population allows it to. I think as a people we are too complacent. We do not. We are too accepting of whatever is imposed on us, and I want to use the property tax as the example of this. I mean, I am not at all, never voiced an opinion that was against property tax. Every developed country have property tax, okay, fine. But you can't impose a flawed system onto a population. and think that you have no responsibility to explain to us in a rational manner how you arrived at the rental value of our properties. And so many people have cried out at the fact that it was ridiculous in terms of the overvaluation. I mean, the kind of value some people have said to me, oh, my own situation is one where it was overvalued. But we have accepted it. And there was a hue and a cry a little bit. The minister says, okay, in order to pacify the loudmouths, I'm going to reduce the rate from 3% to 2%. But what prevents the minister from coming next year when it's okay, they didn't riot last year, and increase it to 6%? A stroke of a pen took it from 3 to 2, and all the while the method that he's used remain as flawed. So I'm saying the population of this country, we need to look at what countries do, what people do in countries where things are imposed on them that is not acceptable. Let's say crime again. Why aren't we on the streets? Why aren't we demanding more accountability from those who are governing us with respect to crime? Instead, what we do is we become insular. We pull ourselves into our home. We increase the amount of burglar proofing we have. We stop going out. We stop letting our children go to the detriment of the economy, and we simply accept it. In other places of the world, that would not happen. And to me, we've been talking the talk. We've been talking the talk of growing this economy beyond oil and gas for too long, and not enough continues happening. In the same way that the government continues to talk loudly about energy and ways and means to shore it up and maintain it and sustain it over time, in the same way, we need to see the visible persons in government talking about how we growing tourism, how are we growing yachting, how are we growing the areas in agriculture that we can grow and we can export and earn foreign exchange. On the issue of crime, again, remember COVID, we had every day or every week we had a committee that gave us update. Maybe that's what we need on the issue of crime. You need to come and talk to the population every day in terms of what did you achieve? How did you push the bar in terms of bringing crime down? So that we feel a sense, at least, that you're taking it seriously. This because, by and large, I think people in this country believe that the government is happy with each of us being collateral damage, if needs be. And the consequence is that a lot of our human capital that we need to grow this economy that we are investing in, simply leaving. And you made the point in the video, Dennise. Our young, and it's not just our young professionals who are leaving, Dennise. It is our highly skilled, highly trained and experienced professionals who are now choosing the cold winter because there is greater safety than there is in Trinidad and Tobago. And that really is the message that I would like to leave.
So what are we doing next?
I guess
I'm not
let me
hearing you. You broke up.
on the set, Dr. Sat, Joanna, could you say something about the bureaucracy that avoids some of these young entrepreneurs from moving forward?
Like the small, medium, and
Say that again?
The young
bureaucracy
entrepreneurs,
that
the
acts
small
as a
and medium
barrier.
entrepreneurs, there's a lot of bureaucracy because I lead a little group we call the Liberal Pitch Lake Tour Guides Association, and it's been more than 2 years now. I'm trying to get a registration certificate. So the bureaucracy and the red tape that a lot of small people who are willing to try to grow the economy in some special way, we have a lot of problems with that. So the bureaucracy is another issue that is dampening the growth of our economy.
And I made that point. It is the bureaucracy. I could give you so many examples of how the bureaucracy, and I made a point, I think, on television the other day. We are about using policy to destroy our fledgling honey apiary sector by putting in place, by opening it up to imports, by the kind of penalty that is being imposed. While at the same time, since 1985, there's a cabinet note that approved the allocation of lands within the forested area for the development of the apiary sector. And so my answer to you, and I'm not sure if you all are hearing me because there's now a lot of static. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, we are hearing you. We are
Okay,
hearing
good. So my answer to you, is that you say you have a group. Again, you have to define. So you have a set of persons, as you say, but you must fall within a sector, within an industry. Circling, I don't know if you hear me.
Yeah.
What's required is that, yeah, in my view, a responsible government would then make a call that brings all of those persons together, bring you around in a space and create an economic cluster that identifies what you're producing, for who you're producing, what are your selling points, what is and do the research in terms of understand what's the potential for growth, and then try to identify what are the support that is required in order to support you and help you to grow. Because you see, if unless we consolidate these little pockets of activities and we identify a growth path for it, we will not have the justification to create human capital for it on a sustained basis, for providing specific funding arrangements for it. So we have to move it from the tiny little pockets of activities to the pooled and cluster activity where we can identify the support that is required and provide it so that the thing manner. There's a greater likelihood of support if you do it like that than if you just create individual incentives. You know, government has, if I go back to agriculture as an example, they have a program now where they're giving young people, if you apply for it, you're getting, they're giving you some training and they're giving you a homestead and etc. Is that a sensible approach? Maybe instead what we should do is identify successful farmers in the community, take these young people, put them in an apprentice situation, an apprentice situation with the farmers. You have a big brother, small brother approach that would that would increase and improve the potential for this thing becoming a success. More than that, you have to identify crops. If in this year, let us say we're doing, what is it, soursop, because there's a huge shortage of soursop. Soursop we could produce. Soursop is it's a superfood. The price is high. Let us see, okay, we are setting up in this year 10 farms of particular size to grow soursop. And I mean, I haven't done the research. Of course, I'm saying we have to do the research. And then you do what I'm suggesting. You bring the young people in. You let them know that the end game is you can own with the state support. You can own this farm. But you can't own it today, or you can't own it next year. You have to prove yourself. You have to put in the time. You have to get the training. You have to do the work. You have to work with an established farm to make it sustainable. And at that point in time, we sit down and we would talk about how you can now earn it, not for free, but through some arrangement that allows you to pay incrementally and maybe, at good interest rate, etc. I mean, there's so creativity is a hell of a thing. All we need to do is bring our creativity to the different things, and then we can really make things happen.
Yeah. Thank you very much,
I
Indira.
hope I answered your question.
Yeah. I think what he wanted to say is there's not sufficient state support, but that's a whole and a lot of bureaucracy. But I think we reached the end of the show, so we can't.
Just before we end, Karen, there's a note in the chats. I wish that some of the same persons who listen and comment on the morning programs would also listen to the evening programs and be properly informed and educated, be more critical and political in the. I think we've done very well. We've got one person to make that comment. And
we appreciate it, and we do appreciate it. Thank you.
Much. And if
people like Indira, Sadan, we've had wonderful guests, every single one. And so I thank you, and I'm sure Dennise thanks you, David. We all thank you for your contribution.
Very much so.
Bye.
You're welcome.
Bye. Take care.
Okay,
David, you're gone.
Thank you, ladies, and thank you, Dr. Sajiwan. It's been a fantastic segment today. Hard Talk with Dennise Demming and Karen Nunez Tesheira. They'll be back next Monday to provide for you the information and all that you need to know about building a better and a stronger Trinidad and Tobago.